This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by Stirling Roastery. For several months you've heard me talking about the great products and scents offered by the Stirling Soap Company. And while there may not seem to be any correlation between soap and coffee, what is similar is the same care and attention to detail in delivering great products to their customers. Stirling Roastery will ship great-tasting beans or ground coffee, for whatever coffee-making process you prefer, right to your door. I gave their breakfast blend a try recently, and I can tell you, it was a great way to get my day kick-started with this smooth, medium blend. And just like their soaps, they have a variety to choose from. Give Stirling Roastery a try at stirlingsoap.com. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. More podcasts and more info to be found at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's August 28th, and on this day back in 2000, it was the battle at Bighorn between Sergio Garcia and Tiger Woods, and it became the accelerant for the Woods-El Nino feud for years to come. So I mentioned this back on the 15th when I talked about that first hint of a rivalry between Tiger and Sergio at the 1999 PGA Championship and that stare down that Sergio had given Tiger after he holed a long putt late on Sunday. Now, in part, that led to the Battle at Bighorn, a made-for-TV match play event in the California desert. Now, Bighorn Golf Club had paid big money to lure this event to the area, and they could not have asked for a better pairing for their first of what would be 3 annual events. Tiger was without a doubt the hottest golfer in the universe at this point. The day before, he'd won the WGC NEC Invitational at Firestone in Akron. He also held 3 of the 4 major golf trophies at this point, and he would win the 4th the following April to complete the Tiger Slam. Sergio was one of the rising stars on tour, but he had been on the struggle bus in 2000. He did not win any tournaments on the PGA or the European Tour that year, and he really hadn't been in the mix much in the previous couple of months. He finished in a tie for 34th at the PGA Championship 2 weeks before this event, and he was coming off of a 17th place finish at the Reno Tahoe Open the day before. Sergio obviously did not have that far to go from Tahoe to Palm Desert, while Tiger had to cross 2 time zones to get there. Now, in addition, Tiger was fighting off the early stages of the flu. Now, the folks at Bighorn figured that about 4,000 patrons would show up for this event and pay the $75 ticket price and enjoy an evening in the desert. Instead, about double that made the trek to Bighorn to watch these two duel it out with millions more watching on NBC. The event garnered a 7.6 Nielsen rating, not astronomical, but better than the U.S. Open rating had been that year and better than expectations with about 8 million people across the country tuning in. Tiger was one up early in this match and he held on to that lead through 7. After Sergio won the 8th hole, the match was all square and it would stay that way until the 16th when Sergio dropped a 35-foot birdie putt to take a 1-up lead. Garcia birdied 4 of the final 5 holes, and he held on to win 1 up and the $1.1 million winner's check. Now, Tiger won $400,000 for his efforts to go along with his $1 million appearance fee, with both golfers donating about $200,000 to charities of their choice. Now, here's the thing about this event, and as I talked about on the 15th and Shane Ryan talked about on his great podcast, Local Knowledge, the PGA stare-down was a spark. Sergio's win on this night and the way he celebrated afterward, as some describe it, as if he'd won a major, kind of lit that fuse and poured gasoline on it for the remainder of their competitive careers, really. Tiger was annoyed to have lost to this El Nino kid, annoyed that he'd treated it with such intensity. Now, if you've ever watched any of these made-for-TV events like, say, the Skins Games back in the 80s, other versions of this event, or even the TGL now, there's a looseness to it, right? Yeah, sure, they want to win, they're competitive, but it's not as serious as, say, 4 Days at Augusta or Carnoustie. Well, from this point on, Tiger put a target on Sergio's back, and he gunned for him every time he had a chance. Thanks again to Shane Ryan of the Local Knowledge Podcast for this stat. But after the battle at Bighorn, Tiger and Sergio were paired up on the weekend of a tournament 7 times over the next 15 years. All 7 of those times, Tiger beat Sergio straight up. And not only that, but Tiger won all 7 of those tournaments. Sergio had a little success in the Ryder Cup against Tiger, but they never played head-to-head in a singles match. Tiger and Davis Love III teamed up to beat Garcia and Lee Westwood in Saturday's 4-ball match in 2002. Garcia paired with Luke Donald to beat Tiger and Jim Furyk in 2006, and once again, Garcia and Donald paired up to beat Tiger and Steve Stricker in 2012. But that's it. When Sergio won his lone major, the 2017 Masters, Tiger was sidelined with a back injury. And a lot of folks point to the spark of a rivalry turning into a full-on conflagration of Tiger's dominance after the pair met at the Battle of Bighorn on this day in 2000. Now, there is an argument that could be made that if it had not been for Arnold Palmer and his emergence as a charismatic champion in the blooming age of television in the 50s, that Tiger and Sergio may not be what they are today. Arnold's influence on the game had a profound impact on the growth of golf into what it's become. Well, on this day in 1954, 24-year-old Arnold Palmer won the U.S. Amateur, changing golf for the better. Palmer had played in the U.S. Amateur 4 previous times, coming up a little short in each one. In this edition, Palmer had to fend off a murderer's row just to get to the finals, including a 39-hole semifinal match against 38-year-old Ed Meester. Here in the 36-hole match play final, he was up against 43-year-old Robert Sweeney, a millionaire investment banker who had homes in Palm Beach, New York, and London. Sweeney was well known for playing with Ben Hogan in the weeks prior to the Masters and giving Hogan a stroke aside. Palmer got down early, and he trailed by 2 holes after the morning 18. He stayed patient, though, and he clawed his way back in to tie Sweeney. Palmer didn't take his first lead of the match until the 32nd hole of the day, and then he went 2 up with 3 to play. Sweeney won the 35th to bring his deficit down to 1, but when Arnie rolled a 40-foot putt to a couple of inches for a sure tap-in par at the 36th, Sweeney conceded the putt and the match to Palmer. Palmer called that his turning point, giving him the confidence he needed to turn professional. The next week, he was given the week off to go play in an invitational tournament in Pennsylvania, and his boss at the paint store only let him go play because he'd won the amateur. He didn't win that tournament, but his golf career soon became legendary. On this day in 1988, Tommy Lasorda attacked the Philadelphia Phanatic. So back on the 23rd, I talked about Lasorda's role in getting Montreal's mascot Youppi tossed from a game in 1989. Well, Lasorda had a thing about mascots. Even before this confrontation with the Phanatic, he had a run-in with the San Diego Chicken. In that episode, the Chicken stomped a Dodger hat accidentally 28 times during a bet. Lasorda confronted the man inside the suit, Ted Gianolis, after the game outside the Dodger locker room, and not so playfully told him that if he saw the Chicken stomp another Dodger hat, then the feathers were going to fly. Well, on this night in '88, Tommy's beef with lovable mascots was on full display. At this point, the Phanatic had gotten his 4-wheeler, and he rode it on the field between innings. This particular time, he was holding a stuffed dummy that was supposed to represent Lasorda. It was just a lot of padding and an LA uniform with extra padding around the midsection to poke fun at Lasorda's belly. The Phanatic parked his 4-wheeler near the Dodger dugout, and he hopped off, carrying the Lasorda look-alike. Tommy was not happy about the bit, and he walked out of the dugout toward the Phanatic, who backed away. Lasorda then grabbed the handlebars of the 4-wheeler, and he started pushing it toward the dugout. Well, staying in character, but if the Phanatic could have mustered a worried look of, "Where are you going with my bike?" he probably would have. And he started walking back towards Lasorda as if to ask that question. Then Lasorda started chasing the Phanatic, He tackled him, ripped the stuffed dummy away from him, and started beating him with it before taking the confiscated effigy and walking back to the Dodger dugout. The Phanatic recovered, hopped on his four-wheeler, stared down the Dodger bench, and that's when Lasorda threw a baseball at him. The Phanatic dodged it, but he rode away nonetheless, so the game could resume. Now, of the 3 run-ins with mascots that Lasorda had, a poll taken by TrueBlueLA.com, Dodger fans ranked his run-in with the Phanatic on this day as the best, with 78% of the vote. And one other thing, Lasorda must have had a little bit of a Midas touch, because those 3 mascots, and only those 3, the Chicken, Youppi, and the Phanatic, are represented in the Baseball Hall of Fame. In another baseball rage incident, Detroit Tiger pitcher Denny McLain was suspended on this day in 1970 by his own ball club. The Tigers did not play on the 27th, but sports writers had space to fill or a column to write, and so they were milling around the Tigers' locker room. McLain was known to pull a prank or two, but he was also known to be mean-spirited about it and take things a little bit too far. He set up an ice-cold bucket of water, and it was dumped on Detroit News sports writer Watson Spolstra. Now, how the gag was supposed to work, or whether Spolstra was the intended target or just a random victim, I'm not sure. But he took the brunt of it, with Detroit Free Press writer Jim Hawkins part of the collateral damage. Tiger general manager Jim Campbell issued the suspension to McLain, which was the second time during the season that he'd been suspended. McLain tried to explain that it was just a joke, and he apologized to the 2 writers who gotten soaked. But McLain was not happy with his GM, complaining he never stood behind his players. Things would not get much better for McLain, though. A few weeks later, he would be suspended for the remainder of the year by Commissioner Bowie Kuhn for taking a gun into a Chicago restaurant and waving it around. On this day in 1960, a protest by the American swimming team at the Olympics was denied, despite solid technological evidence proving them right. The event was the 100-meter men's swimming final that had been held on the 27th. In that race, American Lance Larson surged in the final 25 meters and looked as if he touched the wall just ahead of Australian John Devitt. At this point, humans were the first judges and automatic timers were the backup. There were 3 judges tasked with determining who finished first, 3 more judges tasked with determining who finished second. Of the 3 first-place judges, 2 ruled the Australian touched first. Of the 3 second-place judges, once again, 2 ruled the Australian touched second. Therefore, it was a tie among the 6 judges. The 2 electronic automatic timers, however, showed the American Larson touched first, a tenth of a second quicker. After a long discussion, the Australian Devitt was awarded gold, with the chief judge tasked with collecting the first and second place scorecards, casting the tie-breaking vote, despite not seeing the end of the race or watching any film replay. The American contingent appealed, and on this day, their petition was denied, despite the electronic evidence. U.S. Olympic Committee member Max Ritter called the ruling and denial of the U.S. appeal trickery. The chief judge was not supposed to have the final say. Instead, the backup timers were supposed to be the backup determination of a winner in case of a close finish, which should have given the win to Larson. A little more of an insult is that Larson's official time for the event was changed from 55.1 seconds to 55.2 seconds to match Devitt's time. If there was one good thing to come out of this controversy, though, it was that the Olympic Committee committed to using electronic timing in swimming beginning at the next Olympics in 1964. Another decision made on this day in 1955 that would impact a game in the future happened during a preseason football game. This preseason game featured the Los Angeles Rams and the New York Giants. The game was played in Portland, Oregon, and prior to this game, promoter Harry Glickman from Oregon Sports Attractions petitioned the NFL, asking that if the game was tied after regulation, that the game would continue until there was a winner. The NFL gave the go-ahead for the proposal, and Glickman must have been some sort of modern-day Nostradamus, because after 60 minutes of play, the game was tied at 17, and so they played until a winner could be determined. The Rams' Norm Van Brocklin engineered a 70-yard drive in overtime, with Paul the Tank Younger bulldozing his way in from the 2-yard line to win it for LA. But the effect wasn't immediate. In fact, the change was a bit glacial. It took another 19 years before the NFL would incorporate the sudden death overtime rule into games, beginning in 1974. One other change incorporated in this game, and it would have been interesting if this had ever taken hold, but Glickman also numbered the field differently, and depending on which side of the field you were on, determined how you saw it. The field was numbered goal line to 50, as is normal, and then it continued on 60 through 100 to the opposite goal line. As Glickman pointed out in a letter to the league office, that was done to provide convenience to the fans and the press, to help in calculating distance on long plays, kickoff returns, and punts. Time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. Okay, so stay with me here. This is going to hit your ears a little bit weird, but the majority of the Canadian population lives south of Seattle. Now, I don't mean specifically due south, but rather Seattle is located in the 48th parallel, while the majority of Canadians live in Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, and Quebec, which are all located below the 48th parallel. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.